So it's probably good to get a little bit of historic perspective going from DSM-4 to DSM-5. The current edition DSM-5-TR is the text revision of DSM-5, so it's not significantly different from DSM-5. So what DSM-5 did was first time introduce the dimensional approach to addressing psychiatric conditions that were previously only categorical. And the concept was that psychiatric symptoms are on a dimensional spectrum, and then they cut across different disorders. One of the other things that DSM-5 also did was introduce a cross-cutting measure, which is a tool or a diagnostic screening questionnaire that sort of allows you to think about psychiatric mental health symptoms across different dimensions. So that was significantly different approach to addressing mental health conditions compared to the previous iterations of the DSM.
The research domain criteria are a construct that was developed at the National Institutes of Mental Health to understand the neurobiological basis of behavior. It is not a diagnostic system. And so the idea is that there are certain abnormalities or traits that we observe across different diagnoses, and that those may have a specific neurobiological underpinning. The idea that things are cross-diagnostic or transdiagnostic is really critical for understanding patients and may be the basis for the very broad comorbidity that we see with psychiatric disorders.
The different categories that we have in DSM-5 and 5-TR reflect categories that we use in clinical practice that often influence the kinds of treatments that we choose. However, as we continue to learn more about the neurobiology of disorders, we've come to learn that many disorders, from depression to anxiety to trauma, share similar neurobiological underpinnings. And the RDoC project has been really devoted to trying to understand the foundational underpinnings that we then see expressed as individual conditions captured in DSM.
So I think this question relates to what are the different approaches in terms of diagnosing psychiatric disorders and what are the different perspectives. I think DSM-5 has been, or the 5-TR now has been the gold standard way of standardizing and the criteria for mental health conditions so that everybody pretty much across the world can speak the same language and understand the same illnesses, so that it will facilitate research as well as clinical work. And it's important to highlight that RDoC is not necessarily contrary to the DSM-5 way of thinking of psychiatric disorders. There are some other systems that people have relied on, such as the European model of HiTOP, or those systems that think about psychiatric diagnosis in a more dimensional and a slightly different perspective, but they can also be complementary at times. And I think one of the things we are doing is we are trying to bring everybody at different point of views together as we conceptualize and think about how to move forward with the DSM.
So I think that the frontier that we're all excited about is the identification of biomarkers for symptoms that can be addressed through either medication or psychotherapy. And there's a lot of very exciting work that's happening in psychiatry in general. We're learning a tremendous amount, and those are the kinds of findings that will be informing how we think about what the best strategy is for updating diagnostic approaches.
I agree with Dr. Oquendo that over the coming decade we expect continuing progress in identifying biomarkers, whether for Alzheimer's disease or schizophrenia or mood disorders, other areas of keen interest to all of psychiatry and the patients that we serve. And we're very excited about the possibility of anticipating the incorporation of biomarkers into our classification system.
It's an exciting time to think about the future of the DSM, because as the science advances, this is a unique opportunity for the DSM to get develop further, taking into account all the developments in the science as well as clinical realm.